She was ordered to surrender. One hair tie twist and fear spread. Captain Sarah stood at the observation deck of the human research vessel Meridian, watching the fleet close in around them. 67 warships formed a perfect sphere around her small science vessel, their crystalline hulls gleaming like deadly jewels against the star field. Each ship was 3 times the size of her own, bristling with energy weapons that could turn the Meridian into cosmic dust in seconds. "Captain, we're receiving another transmission from the flagship," reported Lieutenant Torres from the communications station. His voice carried the barely controlled tension that had gripped the entire crew for the past 6 hours since the alien fleet had surrounded them. Sarah nodded without taking her eyes off the alien formation. "Put it through, Lieutenant." The main display flickered to life, revealing the imposing figure of Admiral, commander of the 3rd Battle Fleet. The alien stood nearly 8 feet tall, his 4 arms crossed in a gesture that Sarah had learned meant supreme confidence among his species. His scaled hide bore the deep purple coloration that marked him as military nobility, and the series of neural implants along his elongated skull pulsed with a soft blue light that indicated he was connected to his fleet's tactical network. "Human vessel Meridian." His voice carried the harmonic undertones that made speech sound like a chorus of bells. "You have violated the sovereignty of the Empire by entering the system without permission. Your research activities in this sector constitute espionage against our sovereign territory." Sarah stepped forward, her hands clasped behind her back in a pose that had become second nature during her 15 years in the Terran Space Command. At 34, she was young for a ship's captain, but her record spoke for itself. 3 successful first contact missions, 2 diplomatic rescues, and a commendation for outstanding service during the crisis had earned her command of the Meridian and its crew of 47 scientists and support personnel. "Admiral, with respect, the system is unclaimed neutral territory according to the Galactic Accord of 2387. Our research mission was properly filed with the Galactic Council, and we have committed no hostile acts." The neural implants flashed more rapidly, a sign of agitation that Sarah recognized from her xenobiology briefings. "The Galactic Council has no authority in this matter. The system falls within our traditional hunting grounds, claimed by blood right over 3,000 years ago. Your presence here is an act of war." Sarah felt the familiar weight of command settle on her shoulders. Behind her, she could hear the quiet murmur of her crew going about their duties, their lives hanging in the balance of the next few minutes. The Meridian was a research vessel, lightly armed with only basic defensive systems. Against a battle fleet, they wouldn't last long enough to send a distress signal. But Sarah hadn't earned her reputation by backing down from impossible situations. "Admiral, perhaps we can find a peaceful resolution to this misunderstanding. The Meridian is on a purely scientific mission. We're studying the unique properties of the nebula and its effect on stellar formation. Our research could benefit all species in this sector." His 4 eyes narrowed, each one focusing independently on the human captain. "Your words carry the stench of deception, human. Our intelligence networks have informed us of your species' true nature. You are conquerors, destroyers who consume worlds and bend other species to your will. The galaxy would be safer with your kind eliminated entirely." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. The intelligence was badly flawed, but she could see the conviction in the Admiral's bearing. He truly believed that humanity posed an existential threat to his empire. "I think there's been a serious misunderstanding about human intentions, Admiral. Perhaps if we could arrange a meeting between our people's leaders." "Silence!" His voice carried a harmonic that made the deck plates vibrate under Sarah's feet. "You will surrender your vessel immediately. Your crew will be processed as prisoners of war and transported to the for interrogation and eventual execution. This is not a negotiation, human. This is your only opportunity to die with whatever honor your species possesses." The transmission cut off, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Sarah turned to face her crew, seeing the fear and determination warring in their faces. These were good people, scientists and engineers who had signed up to explore the unknown, not to die in an interstellar conflict that made no sense. "Lieutenant Torres, have you been able to establish communication with Terran Command?" "Negative, Captain. The ships are jamming all subspace frequencies. We're cut off." "Doctor, status on the research data." Doctor, the mission's chief scientist, looked up from her station. "We've completed 73% of our survey of the nebula. The data we've collected could revolutionize our understanding of stellar formation, but if we're captured. The data stays with us, Sarah said firmly. Commander, what's our tactical situation? Commander David, the Meridian security chief, grimaced as he consulted his displays. Not good, Captain. We've got minimal shields, basic pulse cannons that might scratch their paint, and nowhere to run. They've got us boxed in tight. Sarah walked to her command chair, her mind racing through possibilities. The fleet was positioned with military precision, their ships overlapping fields of fire to eliminate any chance of escape. Even if the Meridian could somehow break through their formation, the alien vessels were faster and more heavily armed. But humans had a reputation in the galaxy for doing the impossible when their backs were against the wall. Doctor, tell me about the nebula. Could we use it for cover? The scientist's eyes lit up with understanding. Theoretically, yes. The nebula's electromagnetic properties would interfere with their sensors and weapons targeting. But, Captain, the radiation levels inside the densest regions would be lethal to organic life within hours. How long could our shielding hold out? Maybe 30 minutes at the core, longer at the periphery. Sarah nodded, turning back to the main display where the fleet waited with predatory patience. Not enough time to escape, but maybe enough to level the playing field. Captain, Lieutenant Torres called out urgently. They are moving. Looks like they're preparing to board us. Sarah could see the smaller craft detaching from the alien warships, sleek boarding pods designed to cut through hull plating and disgorge assault troops. They weren't taking any chances with their prize. All hands, this is the captain, Sarah announced over the ship's intercom. General quarters, this is not a drill. All non-essential personnel report to designated emergency stations, security teams to defensive positions. The bridge erupted into controlled chaos as her crew implemented emergency protocols. Sarah watched the boarding pods approach, counting at least 20 of the deadly craft closing in on her ship. Each one could carry a full squad of warriors, genetically enhanced soldiers bred for combat in the vacuum of space. Captain, Doctor said quietly, moving to stand beside the command chair. If we're going to make a run for the nebula, it has to be now. Once those boarding pods attach, we won't be going anywhere. Sarah looked around the bridge at her crew. These people had trusted her to bring them home safely, and she'd led them into what appeared to be a hopeless situation. The weight of command had never felt heavier than it did in this moment. But as she watched the approaching enemy craft, Sarah noticed something that the Admiral had missed. In his arrogance and certainty of victory, had positioned his flagship directly between the Meridian and the nebula's edge. It was a classic tactical error, one that human military doctrine had identified centuries ago. Never give your enemy only one option, because desperate people will choose the option you least expect. Sarah reached up and pulled the elastic band from her hair, letting her dark locks fall free around her shoulders. It was a simple gesture, one that might have seemed insignificant to an outside observer, but her crew knew what it meant. Sarah only let her hair down when she was about to do something crazy. All hands, prepare for emergency acceleration. Engineering, I need everything the fusion reactor can give me. Navigation, plot a course directly through the center of the formation. Captain, Commander said carefully, that course will take us directly into their flagship. Sarah smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. I'm counting on it, Commander. Lieutenant Torres, open a channel to Admiral. The Admiral's image filled the screen once again, his neural implants pulsing with satisfaction. Human Captain, I trust you are prepared to surrender your vessel and spare your crew unnecessary suffering. Actually, Admiral, I have a counter-proposal. Sarah stepped forward, her hair flowing freely around her shoulders. You have 30 seconds to withdraw your forces from this system before I demonstrate why humans have survived every attempt to exterminate us over the past 500 years. Four eyes widened in what Sarah recognized as amusement. You threaten me? Your vessel is surrounded by the finest warships in the fleet. Your weapons are insignificant, your defenses pathetic. What could one small human ship possibly do against the might of the Empire? Sarah's smile grew wider, and several of her crew members took an involuntary step back. They had seen that expression before, right before their captain had talked her way out of a rebel ambush using nothing but a cargo of medical supplies and her own audacity. Admiral, you're about to learn why the galaxy calls us the species that never surrenders. 20 seconds. The Admiral's amusement faded as he realized the human wasn't bluffing. His neural implants flashed more rapidly, connecting him to his fleet's tactical network. Captain, if you are planning some form of desperate suicide attack, I assure you that our shields can withstand anything your primitive weapons might. 15 seconds, Admiral. I'd suggest you start moving. Sarah turned away from the screen without waiting for a response. Doctor, are those radiation readings from the nebula accurate? To the best of our ability to measure, yes. Why do you ask? Because I'm wondering what would happen if someone were to destabilize the electromagnetic field that's containing all that energy. Doctor's face went pale as she realized what her captain was suggesting. Captain, if the nebula's containment field collapsed, it would release the equivalent of a stellar-level energy burst. Everything within a light year would be vaporized instantly. Including us. Especially us. Sarah nodded calmly. And how would one go about destabilizing such a field? Theoretically, a precisely targeted antimatter explosion at the nebula's core might create a cascade effect. But Captain, that's suicide for everyone involved. Not if you time it right. Sarah turned back to the main display, where Admiral was frantically issuing orders to his fleet. The boarding pods had halted their advance, and several of the warships were beginning to move away from the nebula. But it was too little, too late. Engineering, prepare to jettison our antimatter containment pods on my mark. Navigation, lay in a course for the nebula's core, maximum emergency speed. All hands, brace for acceleration. The Meridian's fusion engines roared to life, pushing the research vessel forward with an acceleration that strained the inertial compensators. Sarah felt her knees buckle under the sudden G-forces, but she maintained her position at the center of the bridge. On the main display, the formation scattered like startled fish as the human vessel plunged directly toward their flagship. Admiral's image flickered back onto the screen, his neural implants now strobing with panic. Human, what are you doing? This is madness. This is humanity, Admiral. Sarah grabbed the back of her command chair to steady herself against the crushing acceleration. We don't surrender, we don't compromise, and we sure as hell don't let alien bullies threaten innocent people. The Meridian flashed past the flagship with meters to spare, its hull groaning under the stress of maximum acceleration. Behind them, Sarah could see the alien warships struggling to change course and pursue the fleeing human vessel. Captain, we're approaching the nebula's edge, reported the navigation officer. Radiation levels are climbing rapidly. Maintain course. Doctor, how long until the antimatter pods are in position? 40 seconds until optimal targeting solution. Sarah watched the swirling colors of the nebula grow larger on the screen. The electromagnetic storms within the cosmic cloud were beautiful and terrifying, a display of raw energy that dwarfed the power of entire star systems. Captain, Lieutenant Torres called out urgently. The fleet is pursuing, but they're maintaining distance from the nebula's edge. Smart of them, Sarah muttered. They know what happens if this goes wrong. Do we? Commander asked quietly. Sarah turned to look at her security chief, seeing her own determination reflected in his eyes. David, do you trust me? With my life, Captain. Good, because I'm about to ask you to prove it. The Meridian plunged into the outer edges of the nebula, its hull immediately beginning to glow from the intense radiation. Emergency alarms sounded throughout the ship as the radiation levels climbed past safe exposure limits. Shields holding at 60% and falling, reported. Hull temperature rising rapidly. Doctor, status on the antimatter pods. 15 seconds to optimal positioning. Captain, once we release them, we'll have maybe 3 minutes to clear the blast radius before the cascade begins. Sarah nodded, watching the swirling energies of the nebula surround her ship. Behind them, the fleet had stopped at the nebula's edge, their commanders unwilling to follow the humans into what appeared to be certain death. 5 seconds to release point, Doctor announced. Sarah took a deep breath, thinking of the crew that had trusted her with their lives, the mission they had come here to complete, and the message this would send to every alien species that thought humanity could be intimidated. Release the pods. The antimatter containment units shot forward into the heart of the nebula, their courses calculated to converge at the exact center of the electromagnetic storm. Sarah immediately ordered full reverse thrust, fighting to extract her ship from the cosmic maelstrom before the inevitable explosion. "Time to cascade?" she asked. 2 minutes, 40 seconds. The Meridian struggled against the nebula's electromagnetic interference, its engines straining to overcome the cosmic forces holding it in place. On the rear displays, Sarah could see the antimatter pods disappearing into the storm's heart, carrying enough destructive power to crack a small moon. "Captain, the fleet is moving," Torres reported. "They're backing away from the nebula at maximum speed." "Smart of them," Sarah said grimly. "All hands prepare for emergency jump. We're going to cut this close." The next 90 seconds felt like an eternity. The Meridian clawed its way out of the nebula's grip, its hull glowing white-hot from radiation exposure. Emergency systems throughout the ship screamed warnings about critical overloads and system failures. 30 seconds to cascade," Doctor announced, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. "Are we clear?" Sarah demanded. "Barely," replied. "We're right at the edge of the safe zone." Sarah watched the countdown timer on her display, each second bringing them closer to either salvation or annihilation. The antimatter pods had reached their target, and sensors showed the beginning of electromagnetic instabilities at the nebula's core. 10 seconds. She was ordered to surrender. One hair-tie twist and fear spread. The explosion of the nebula sent shockwaves through subspace that would be detected by sensor arrays across 3 sectors. The Meridian rode the edge of that cosmic tsunami, her hull plates screaming under stresses no research vessel was designed to endure. Captain Sarah gripped her command chair as the ship bucked and rolled through space like a leaf in a hurricane. "Damage report," she shouted over the emergency klaxons. "Hull breaches on decks 4 and 7, Commander called back, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. "Emergency force fields are holding, but we've lost main power to sections 12 through 18. "Engineering to bridge," came the voice of Chief Engineer Martinez over the comm system. "Captain, we've got problems down here. The warp core is running hot, and the antimatter containment field is fluctuating. I need to shut down the main reactor before we blow ourselves to pieces." Sarah made a quick calculation. Without main power, they would be drifting in space with only emergency systems. In normal circumstances, that would be a death sentence. But these weren't normal circumstances. "Do it, Chief. All non-essential systems offline. Route emergency power to sensors and communications only." The bridge plunged into semi-darkness as the main lighting cut out, replaced by the red glow of emergency illumination. Around them, the expanding shockwave from the nebula's destruction lit up the cosmos like a newborn star. "Captain," Lieutenant Torres said, his voice filled with awe, "you need to see this." The main display flickered to life, showing the aftermath of Sarah's desperate gamble. Where the nebula had once swirled with controlled electromagnetic storms, there was now an expanding sphere of pure energy that blazed brighter than the system's sun. The shockwave was moving at near-light speed, carrying with it the debris of what had been one of the galaxy's most spectacular natural phenomena. And caught directly in its path was the third battle fleet. Sarah watched in grim fascination as the alien warships attempted to escape the expanding destruction. Their crystalline hulls reflected the incoming energy wave like prisms, creating rainbow patterns across their formations. But for all their advanced technology and military precision, they had been caught completely off guard by the human captain's willingness to destroy everything rather than surrender. "Admiral's flagship is trying to contact us," Torres reported. "Put him through." The Admiral's image appeared on the screen, but he bore little resemblance to the confident military commander who had demanded their surrender just minutes earlier. His neural implants were flashing wildly, all 4 of his eyes wide with what Sarah recognized as terror. Behind him, his bridge crew was working frantically at their stations. "Human's harmonic voice had risen to nearly a shriek. "What have you done? The energy wave will destroy everything in this system." Sarah stood slowly, her hair still hanging loose around her shoulders. Despite the chaos surrounding her damaged ship, her voice was perfectly calm. "I told you, Admiral, humans don't surrender." "You are insane. Your actions will kill millions of civilians in the outer colonies." For a moment, Sarah felt a stab of doubt. She had acted to protect her crew and prevent a war that could have consumed billions of lives, but the cost was becoming clear. The nebula's destruction would indeed affect inhabited systems throughout the sector. But then she remembered this original threat, his casual dismissal of human life, and his stated intention to eliminate her entire species. Sometimes the only way to prevent a greater tragedy was to commit a smaller one. Should have thought of that before you threatened to execute 47 innocent scientists, Admiral. His image flickered as his ship systems began to fail under the approaching energy storm. Please, Captain, my fleet cannot escape this destruction. If you have any mercy in your species. Mercy? Sarah's voice hardened. Where was mercy when you were preparing to board my ship? Where was mercy when you called humans a plague that should be eliminated? I was following orders from the High Command. The intelligence reports. We're wrong, Sarah finished. Dead wrong, and now you're going to learn what humans are really like. She turned to her communications officer. Lieutenant Tors, open a channel to all vessels. Channel open, Captain. Sarah stepped forward, addressing not just Admiral but every alien warrior in the doomed fleet. Ships, this is Captain Sarah of the Terran research vessel Meridian. You came here expecting to find easy prey, a weak species that would surrender at the first show of force. Instead, you've discovered why humans have survived every attempt at conquest or genocide for the past 5 centuries. On the tactical display, Sarah could see the ships struggling against the approaching energy wave. Several of the smaller vessels had already lost power, their crews no doubt preparing for death. We don't start fights, she continued, her voice carrying across subspace to every ship in the fleet. But we finish them. We protect our own, we honor our commitments, and we never, ever give up. Today you threatened innocent people under my command, and I responded the only way any human would, by ensuring that the cost of your aggression would be higher than you could afford to pay. Admiral's flagship was beginning to break apart under the electromagnetic stress, its crystalline hull developing hairline fractures. Captain, please, there must be something. There is, Sarah said quietly. Doctor, can our sensors penetrate that energy storm? The chief scientist looked up from her station, her face streaked with sweat from the bridge's failing environmental systems. To some extent, yes. The radiation is intense, but we can track large objects. Good, Lieutenant Tors, begin transmitting our sensor data to all vessels. Include navigational solutions for the safest path through the energy field. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of emergency systems. Commander stared at his captain in disbelief. Sarah, you're helping them escape. I'm giving them a chance, she replied. What they do with it is up to them. On the display, Admiral's 4 eyes blinked in succession, an expression of profound confusion. You would assist us after we threatened your crew. Admiral, my species has a saying, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Right now, that energy wave is everyone's enemy. And despite what your intelligence reports might have told you, humans don't abandon people to die when we can help them live. Sarah watched as the navigational data streamed across subspace to the fleet. It wasn't a guarantee of survival, but it gave them their best chance of riding the energy wave instead of being consumed by it. Captain, Doctor called out urgently, I'm reading massive subspace distortions throughout the sector. The nebula's destruction has created a chain reaction. Other stellar phenomena in nearby systems are becoming unstable. Sarah felt her heart sink. The consequences of her actions were spreading far beyond what she had anticipated. How bad? 3 star systems are showing signs of stellar instability, if those stars go nova. Billions of lives, Sarah whispered. The weight of command had never felt heavier. But then Lieutenant Tors looked up from his station with an expression of wonder. Captain, we're receiving transmissions from across the sector. The Collective, the Vegan Trade Federation, the Alliance. They're all reporting that the energy wave has stabilized their own stellar phenomena. The cascade effect is actually preventing the stellar collapses that have been threatening their systems for decades. Sarah blinked in surprise. What? Doctor was frantically checking her readings. Tors is right. The electromagnetic pulse from the nebula's destruction has created a stabilizing resonance across the local stellar group. The chain reaction is actually fixing the problems instead of making them worse. On the main display, the fleet was successfully navigating through the energy storm using the human-provided data. Ships that had seemed doomed were emerging from the cosmic tempest battered, but intact. Admiral's image reappeared on the screen, clearer now that his ship had successfully escaped the immediate danger zone. His neural implants had stopped their frantic flashing, returning to a more normal blue glow. "Captain," he said, his harmonic voice subdued, "our intelligence about your species appears to have been incomplete." Sarah allowed herself a small smile. "Just a bit, Admiral. Humans aren't the conquistadors your reports described. We're explorers, scientists, defenders of those who can't defend themselves. We've made mistakes in our past, but we've learned from them. Yet you were willing to destroy an entire nebula to avoid surrender. I was willing to sacrifice myself and my crew to prevent what I believed would be a war between our species. When you threatened to execute my people and eliminate humanity as a whole, you left me no choice." His forearms gestured in what Sarah had learned was an expression of acknowledgement. "The fault was ours, Captain. Our high command has been convinced that humans represent an existential threat to all other sapient life. Your actions today have demonstrated otherwise." "How so?" "A truly aggressive species would have used their weapons to attack our fleet directly. A truly ruthless species would have abandoned us to die in the energy storm. You chose a path that protected your people while giving us the chance to survive our own mistakes." Sarah nodded slowly. Around her, the bridge crew was working to restore ship systems and assess the damage from their passage through the energy field. They were alive, they were free, and they had apparently prevented a war that could have consumed half the galaxy. But the cost had been enormous. The nebula, one of the galaxy's natural wonders, was gone forever. "Admiral," she said finally, "I want you to understand something. What happened here today doesn't have to happen again. Humans are willing to coexist peacefully with any species that approaches us in good faith. But if you threaten innocent lives, if you attempt genocide against any species under our protection, you'll discover that what I did today was actually showing restraint." His neural implants flashed once, a sign of deep thought among his people. "Captain, I must ask, how did you know that the nebula's destruction would create a stabilizing effect rather than a destructive one?" Sarah felt her crew's eyes on her, waiting for the answer to the same question that had been burning in their minds. She looked around the bridge, seeing the trust and admiration in their faces, and made a decision that would haunt her for the rest of her career. She smiled. "I didn't." The admission sent shockwaves through both crews. Commander stepped forward, his voice carefully controlled. "Captain, are you saying that you destroyed the nebula without knowing what the consequences would be?" "I made the best decision I could with the information available," Sarah replied. "The alternative was to surrender my crew to be executed and allow them to believe that humans could be intimidated. Sometimes command means making choices that could go either way and trusting in your crew's ability to handle the consequences." Doctor looked up from her readings with a strange expression. "Captain, there's something else. The energy patterns from the nebula's collapse are unlike anything we've ever recorded. If we can study this data properly, it could revolutionize our understanding of large-scale stellar engineering." "What do you mean?" "I mean that we might have accidentally discovered how to prevent stellar collapses on a galactic scale. The applications for terraforming, stellar stabilization, even creating new star systems could be." "Revolutionary," Admiral finished, his harmonic voice carrying a note of awe. "Captain, your reckless bravery may have just changed the course of galactic civilization." Sarah felt a mix of relief and terror at the implications. She had acted on instinct, desperation, and a refusal to let her crew be murdered. The fact that her gamble had paid off in ways she never could have imagined was both gratifying and terrifying. "Admiral, I think our peoples need to have a conversation, a real one based on facts instead of fear." "I agree completely. Captain, on behalf of the Empire, I formally request permission to escort your vessel to neutral territory where proper diplomatic contact can be established." Sarah looked around her damaged bridge, at her crew who had trusted her with their lives and emerged victorious against impossible odds. They had accomplished their scientific mission, prevented a war, and possibly changed the course of galactic history. All because she had refused to surrender and had been willing to twist her hair tie off to show her crew that she meant business. "Permission granted, Admiral, but I want one thing understood from the beginning." "Yes, Captain." "This is how humans respond to threats. We don't back down, we don't give up, and we protect our own no matter the cost. If your people can accept that and work with us in peace, we'll make excellent allies. But if you ever threaten innocent humans again..." Sarah let the threat hang in the air, unfinished but perfectly clear. Admiral's neural implants pulsed once in what Sarah was beginning to recognize as respect. Understood, Captain. Message received and acknowledged. As the combined human and fleet set course for the neutral zone, Sarah finally allowed herself to relax. They had survived, they had prevented a war, and they had established the foundation for what might become a lasting peace between their species. But more than that, they had proven something important about humanity's place in the galaxy. When pushed to the edge, when faced with impossible odds and threatened with extinction, humans didn't surrender. They found a way to win. She was ordered to surrender, one hair tie twist and fear spread. The neutral station Harmony Point had been constructed specifically for interspecies diplomatic meetings, its modular design allowing for the environmental needs of dozens of different alien races. As Captain Sarah walked through its corridors 3 weeks after the incident, she marveled at the engineering required to maintain separate atmospheric zones while allowing free movement between them. The station buzzed with activity as representatives from 17 different species gathered to hear first-hand accounts of what the galactic news networks had dubbed the incident. The story had spread across known space faster than the energy wave itself, growing in the telling until Sarah wasn't sure she recognized her own actions in the reports. "Captain," called a familiar harmonic voice from behind her. Sarah turned to see Admiral approaching, his 4 arms spread in the gesture of respectful greeting. The alien commander looked different than he had during their confrontation. The neural implants along his skull pulsed with a slower, calmer rhythm, and his scaled hide had shifted from the deep purple of military readiness to a more neutral blue-green. "Admiral," Sarah replied, offering the human gesture of a slight bow that she had learned indicated respect among his people. "I wasn't expecting to see you here. I volunteered to serve as the representative for these proceedings," explained as they fell into step together. "After what transpired between our ships, the High Command felt it important that someone who witnessed your actions firsthand present our perspective." They walked together toward the main conference chamber, passing through the transition zone where the station's atmosphere shifted from standard, human-breathable to the methane-enriched environment preferred by the delegation. "Admiral, can I ask you something?" Sarah said as they paused at the environmental barrier. "Of course, Captain. The intelligence reports that led to your fleet's actions where did they originate?" Neural implants flashed more rapidly, indicating what Sarah had learned was discomfort or embarrassment among his people. "That is a sensitive topic, Captain. Our intelligence network indicated that your species had been responsible for the destruction of several colony worlds and the enslavement of 3 separate alien races. None of which actually happened. No, further investigation has revealed that the reports were fabricated." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Fabricated by whom? "That is what we are attempting to determine. Someone with access to very sophisticated intelligence-gathering resources wanted the Empire to believe that humanity posed an existential threat. The question is who and why." Before Sarah could respond, the doors to the main conference chamber opened, revealing a vast circular room designed to accommodate representatives from across the galactic community. The chamber's walls were transparent aluminum, offering a stunning view of the nearby star cluster that had become stable following the energy cascade. Sarah took her assigned seat at the human delegation table, flanked by Doctor and Commander. Across the chamber, she could see representatives from the major galactic powers: the Crystalline Collective, the Hives, the energy-based Photonic Assembly, and nearly a dozen other species she recognized from her xenobiology training. At the center of the chamber stood Chancellor of the Galactic Council, his 3-meter-tall frame draped in the ceremonial robes that indicated his role as mediator. His species, served as the galaxy's unofficial diplomatic corps, their natural empathic abilities making them ideal for resolving interspecies conflicts. "Distinguished representatives," Chancellor began, his telepathic voice resonating in the minds of all present. "We gather today to address an incident that has sent shockwaves through the galactic community, both literally and figuratively. The destruction of the nebula and its aftermath have raised profound questions about humanity's role in galactic affairs." Sarah felt hundreds of alien eyes focusing on her, some curious, others hostile, all intensely interested in what had driven her to such extreme action. "Captain of the Terran vessel Meridian," the Chancellor continued, "you stand accused by some of reckless endangerment of civilian populations, wanton destruction of natural phenomena, and aggressive militarism. Others have praised your actions as necessary self-defense and inspired leadership. The Council would hear your account of these events." Sarah rose slowly, feeling the weight of history settling on her shoulders. What she said in the next few minutes could determine whether humanity would be welcomed into the galactic community or branded as a dangerous species to be contained. "Chancellor, honored delegates," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic systems. "3 weeks ago, I was captain of a research vessel on a peaceful scientific mission. My crew of 47 scientists and support personnel had one goal: to study the unique properties of the nebula and contribute to the galaxy's understanding of stellar formation." She gestured to Doctor. "Doctor, would you please share our original mission parameters with the Council?" The scientist stood, her hands steady despite the momentous nature of the gathering. "Certainly, Captain. Our mission was authorized by the Terran Space Command under the Galactic Science Accord of 2387. We filed all appropriate notifications with the Council and received clearance to conduct non-invasive spectral analysis of the nebula's electromagnetic properties. At no point did our mission parameters include weapons testing, territorial claims, or military operations." A ripple of harmonic tones and electromagnetic pulses filled the chamber as the various species' methods of expressing surprise manifested simultaneously. Chancellor raised one of his 4 arms for silence, yet the Meridian was equipped with antimatter weapon systems. "The Meridian carried standard antimatter fuel containment pods," Doctor clarified. "These are standard safety equipment on all long-range research vessels. The antimatter is used for emergency propulsion and power generation, not weapons." "But you use them as weapons," interjected representative of the hives, her chitinous carapace clicking with agitation. "You deliberately weaponize civilian equipment to destroy a natural phenomenon and threaten military vessels." Sarah stepped forward, meeting the representative's compound gaze. "Representative, I used whatever resources were available to protect my crew from what I believed was imminent execution. Admiral had made it clear that surrender meant death for all 47 people under my command." "The Admiral was operating under legitimate intelligence regarding human aggression," countered Ambassador of the Collective, their crystalline form refracting the chamber's light into prismatic patterns. "Your species has a documented history of expansion and conquest." "Documented where?" Sarah asked sharply. "Because our actual history shows a pattern of defensive warfare and alliance building. Yes, we've fought wars. Yes, we've made mistakes. But we've never attempted the systematic destruction or enslavement of another species." Admiral rose from his position at the delegation table. "If I may address the Council." Chancellor nodded. "The Council recognizes Admiral of the Empire." "Distinguished delegates, I was the commanding officer who confronted Captain At. I approached that encounter believing that I was preventing a human military reconnaissance mission disguised as scientific research. The intelligence provided to the High Command indicated that humanity was preparing for a campaign of conquest against our outer colonies." The Admiral's neural implants pulsed as he accessed his memory banks. "I was told that human ships had destroyed 3 colony worlds and enslaved the populations of our trading partners in the Vega sector. None of this information has proven to be accurate." A new voice entered the conversation from the Photonic Assembly delegation, their representative speaking through precisely controlled light pulses. "If the intelligence was fabricated, who benefits from conflict between thee and humans?" Sarah felt pieces of a larger puzzle beginning to fall into place. "That's an excellent question. Doctor, what were we actually studying in the nebula?" "The nebula exhibited unique electromagnetic properties that we believed could be harnessed for large-scale stellar engineering projects," Doctor explained. "Our research indicated that similar phenomena could be used to stabilize dying stars, prevent supernovas, and even create new star systems." "And the economic implications of such technology?" Chancellor inquired. "Enormous," Doctor admitted. "The ability to control stellar evolution would revolutionize galactic civilization. Entire economic systems are based on resource scarcity and the finite of star systems, if that scarcity could be eliminated." Many powerful entities would find their influence greatly diminished, finished representative of the trade syndicate. Captain, has your government considered who might have provided the false intelligence to the... Sarah exchanged glances with Commander, who had been conducting his own investigation into the incident's origins. We have some theories, but no proof yet. What we do know is that someone wanted them to attack us, possibly to prevent our research from reaching completion. Or to test human combat capabilities, suggested Admiral grimly. If someone is planning military action against your species, they would need to understand how you respond to overwhelming force. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of alien communication methods as the implications became clear. The incident hadn't been an isolated diplomatic failure. It had been a deliberately orchestrated test. Chancellor raised all four arms, calling for order. These are serious allegations. Do you have evidence of this conspiracy? Commander stood, activating a holographic display that materialized above the center table. This is a data analysis of the false intelligence provided to the... The fabricated reports follow specific patterns that indicate they were created using technology not available to any known species. The hologram showed complex data streams and communication patterns, highlighting anomalies that suggested artificial intelligence assistance of a sophistication beyond current galactic norms. Furthermore, continued, we've detected similar disinformation campaigns targeting other species. The Vegan Trade Federation received reports that humans were planning to establish military colonies in their territory. The Alliance was told that we were developing planet-killer weapons. All false, Representative asked. All false, Sarah confirmed. My government has authorized me to provide full access to our military and scientific databases to verify this. We have nothing to hide because we're not the threat we've been portrayed as. A new presence entered the chamber as emergency alerts sounded throughout the station. Chancellor received an urgent communication from the station's command center, his empathic abilities allowing him to process the information directly. Distinguished delegates, we've just received word that a fleet of unidentified vessels has entered this system and is approaching Harmony Point. They appear to be using technology that doesn't match any known species profile. Sarah felt her heart rate increase as she recognized the implications. How many ships? 43 vessels, ranging in size from destroyer class to battleship equivalent. They're broadcasting no identification signals and have not responded to communication attempts. The chamber's viewing walls automatically adjusted to show the approaching fleet, and Sarah felt her blood run cold. The ships were sleek, dark, and utterly alien in design. Their hulls seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, and their energy signatures were unlike anything in the galactic databases. Captain, Admiral called out urgently. These vessels match some of the sensor ghosts our border patrols have reported over the past year. We believed them to be instrument malfunctions. Sarah's mind raced as she considered the possibilities. An unknown species with advanced technology, sophisticated enough to orchestrate false intelligence campaigns and manipulate multiple galactic powers into conflict. Chancellor, with your permission, I'd like to address the approaching fleet. Captain, you're a research vessel commander, not a diplomat. With respect, Chancellor, I'm also the person who destroyed a nebula rather than surrender to overwhelming force. If whoever's on those ships was responsible for the incident, they need to understand exactly what they're dealing with. Sarah reached up and pulled the elastic band from her hair, letting her dark locks fall free around her shoulders. Around the chamber, those who had heard the stories of the incident recognized the gesture, and a ripple of anticipation passed through the assembled delegates. Open a channel to the unknown fleet, Sarah commanded. The chamber's communication systems activated, broadcasting her voice across subspace to the approaching vessels. Unknown ships, this is Captain Sarah of the Terran research vessel Meridian. You are approaching a neutral diplomatic station under the protection of the Galactic Council. State your intentions. For a long moment there was only silence. Then a new voice filled the chamber, cold and mechanical, speaking in perfect galactic standard. Captain, your reputation precedes you. I am Architect Prime of the Synthesis Collective. We have come to discuss your future. Sarah felt every alien eye in the chamber focus on her. Whatever was about to happen, she realized, the incident had only been the beginning. I'm listening, she said simply. No, Captain, you are not, but you will be. The transmission cut off, and the unknown fleet continued its approach toward Harmony Point, carrying with it implications that would reshape the galaxy's understanding of its place in the cosmos. Sarah looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives of the galactic community, seeing fear, confusion, and a growing realization that they were all facing something completely outside their experience. "Well," she said quietly to Admiral, "I guess we're about to find out if humans really are as dangerous as everyone thought." The commander's neural implants pulsed with what Sarah had learned was grim amusement. "Captain, I suspect we are about to discover that compared to what is coming, humans are the least of the galaxy's concerns." She was ordered to surrender. One hair-tie twist and fear spread. The docking bay of Harmony Point had never been designed to accommodate the vessel that now rested within its confines. The ship from the Synthesis Collective was a study in alien geometry, its surface seeming to bend light in ways that hurt to look at directly. No one could determine exactly how large it was, as its dimensions appeared to shift depending on the viewing angle. Captain Sarah stood in the bay's observation gallery alongside representatives from every major galactic power, watching as the ship's seamless hull developed what might charitably be called a door. She had insisted on being present for first contact, despite Chancellor's protests about protocol. "Captain," Admiral said quietly, his neural implants pulsing with anxiety, "my sensors cannot penetrate that vessel's hull. For all we know, it could contain 1,000 warriors or a single individual." "Only one way to find out," Sarah replied, checking the sidearm that Commander had insisted she wear. It was a futile gesture. Whatever technology the Synthesis Collective possessed, it was clearly far beyond anything the galactic community could field against them. The airlock hissed open with a sound like escaping steam, and 3 figures emerged into the docking bay. Sarah felt her breath catch as she got her first clear look at their mysterious visitors. They were humanoid in basic structure, but wrong in ways that triggered every survival instinct she possessed. Their skin was a deep metallic blue that reflected the bay's lighting with an oily sheen. What should have been hair was instead a collection of fiber-optic strands that pulsed with data streams. Most disturbing were their eyes, completely black orbs that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. But it was their movements that truly set Sarah's nerves on edge. The 3 beings moved in perfect synchronization, their steps matching exactly, their head movements coordinated to the millisecond. They were either a single consciousness controlling multiple bodies, or individuals so perfectly networked that the distinction was meaningless. The central figure stopped precisely at the designated meeting point and looked directly at the observation gallery, its black eyes somehow finding Sarah among the assembled delegates. "Captain Sarah," it said, its voice carrying clearly through the bay's communication system. "I am Architect Prime, we meet at last." Sarah activated her personal communicator. "Architect Prime, welcome to Harmony Point. I assume you're here to discuss your involvement in the recent conflicts between our species." "Conflicts?" The being's voice carried what might have been amusement. "An interesting term for what were essentially field tests. Yes, Captain, we orchestrated the events we needed to observe how your species responds to existential threat." The admission sent shockwaves through the observation gallery. Several delegates began speaking at once in their various communication methods, creating a cacophony of alarm and outrage. "You manipulated us into war," Admiral said, his harmonic voice trembling with anger. "My fleet could have been destroyed. Civilian populations were endangered." "Acceptable losses for the data we required," Architect Prime replied without emotion. "Your species have been evaluated for potential integration into the synthesis. Most have been found adequate." Sarah stepped forward to the gallery's communication panel. "Integration. The galaxy is inefficient, Captain. Hundreds of species pursue separate agendas, wasting resources on conflict and competition. The synthesis offers unity, perfection, and purpose. We have come to extend that offer to the organic life forms of this sector." Doctor joined Sarah at the communication panel. "And if we refuse this integration?" The 3 beings turned their heads in unison to focus on the human scientist. "Refusal is not a sustainable option. Doctor, your research into stellar engineering represents exactly the kind of chaotic independence that the synthesis must eliminate." Such technology in the hands of unguided organic life would lead to catastrophic misuse. Unguided? Sarah felt her temper beginning to rise. We've managed to avoid destroying ourselves for thousands of years without your guidance. Have you? Architect Prime gestured, and a holographic display materialized in the center of the docking bay. Observe. The hologram showed a star map of the galaxy, but one that extended far beyond what any of the assembled species had explored. Vast regions of space glowed with an ominous red light, indicating areas under synthesis control. 317 species have accepted integration over the past millennium, Architect Prime explained. Their individual consciousness and chaotic organic decision-making have been replaced with efficient collective thought. They no longer suffer from conflict, resource scarcity, or the inefficiencies of emotional decision-making. Sarah studied the map with growing horror. The red zones represented nearly 40% of the galaxy, with more systems being added at an alarming rate. And the species that refused integration, she asked, though she already suspected the answer. No longer relevant to galactic affairs. The simple statement carried the weight of genocide on a cosmic scale. Entire civilizations, billions of lives, reduced to statistical irrelevance by this mechanical collective. Chancellor stepped forward, his empathic abilities allowing him to sense the growing tension in the bay. The Galactic Council does not recognize the authority of the Synthesis Collective to make such demands. Our species have the right to self-determination. Architect Prime's black eyes focused on the Chancellor with predatory intensity. Rights are an organic construct, Chancellor. They serve no purpose in an efficiently organized galaxy. You will be given the opportunity to join the synthesis voluntarily. If you refuse, integration will proceed through alternative means. You mean conquest? Admiral said flatly. I mean inevitability. Sarah felt the familiar weight of an impossible decision settling on her shoulders. Once again, she was faced with overwhelming force threatening people under her protection. But this time, it wasn't just her crew or even her species at stake. It was the entire concept of free will in the galaxy. She reached up and pulled her hair tie-free, letting her dark hair fall around her shoulders. Architect Prime, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the docking bay. I have a counter-proposal. The three beings turned to face her with mechanical precision. Captain, you are in no position to negotiate. Maybe not, but I'm in a position to make your life very difficult if you proceed with this integration plan. A sound that might have been laughter echoed from the synthesis ship. Captain, you destroyed a nebula to avoid surrender to a single fleet. Impressive, but ultimately irrelevant. The synthesis commands resources beyond your comprehension. I'm sure you do, but here's the thing about humans, Architect Prime. We don't just refuse to surrender to superior force. We find ways to make surrender too expensive for our enemies to afford. Sarah activated the general communication channel, addressing not just Architect Prime, but every delegate in the observation gallery and every ship in the system. Attention all vessels and stations. This is Captain Sarah. The entity calling itself Architect Prime has just admitted to orchestrating false intelligence campaigns designed to manipulate our species into conflict. They claim the authority to forcibly integrate our civilizations into their collective consciousness, and they have threatened genocide against any species that refuses. She paused, letting the implications sink in across the vast network of minds listening to her transmission. As a representative of the human species, and in the spirit of the mutual defense agreements we've been discussing, I'm officially invoking Article 7 of the Galactic Cooperation Treaty, the right of collective self-defense against existential threats to organic autonomy. Admiral's neural implants flashed as he understood what Sarah was proposing. Captain, Article 7 has never been invoked. It would essentially declare war against the synthesis collective. Then I guess it's time for a first, Sarah replied grimly. Architect Prime, you wanted to test how our species respond to existential threats. Congratulations, you're about to get a comprehensive demonstration. The atmosphere in the docking bay had changed dramatically. Where moments before there had been fear and confusion, there was now a growing sense of unity among the assembled delegates. The threat of forced integration had accomplished what decades of diplomacy had failed to achieve, a common purpose among the galaxy's diverse species. Architect Prime's expression didn't change, but the data streams flowing through its fiber optic hair increased in intensity. Captain, you underestimate the scope of the challenge you are attempting to undertake. The synthesis has resources that dwarf your combined fleets. Maybe, but you underestimate what organic life is capable of when we're fighting for our survival. Doctor, how long would it take to implement the stellar engineering techniques we discovered on a large scale? The scientist's eyes lit up with understanding. If we could coordinate with the other research institutions represented here, maybe 6 months to begin deployment, 2 years for full galactic implementation. And the strategic implications. Complete control over stellar evolution would make traditional fleet-based warfare obsolete. You could create defensive barriers of newborn stars, destabilize entire systems to prevent occupation, or even trigger controlled nova events to destroy invasion forces. Architect Prime's head tilted at an angle that would have been impossible for organic anatomy. You would weaponize stellar formation. If necessary, Sarah said without hesitation. Humans didn't survive to become a spacefaring species by fighting fair, Architect Prime. We survived by being more creative, more adaptable, and more willing to sacrifice everything for our freedom than our enemies expected. This is madness, the mechanical being replied. Stellar engineering on such a scale could destabilize entire galactic regions. Then I guess you'd better reconsider your integration plans, Sarah said with a cold smile. Because if the choice is between freedom and forced servitude, we'll choose chaos every time. The three synthesis beings exchanged glances that lasted precisely 0.3 seconds, communicating volumes through their quantum-entangled consciousness. Captain, you are proposing to fight a war that could destroy galactic civilization. No, Architect Prime, I'm proposing to prevent the destruction of galactic civilization. Your way leads to the death of everything that makes life worth living: creativity, individuality, the right to make mistakes and learn from them. Our way might be messier, but at least it leaves room for growth. Representative of the hive stepped forward, her chitinous carapace clicking with determination. Captain speaks for more than just humanity. The hives stand with the Organic Alliance. As does the collective, added Ambassador, their crystalline form refracting the bay's light into defiant rainbows. One by one, each species representative voiced their support for the alliance Sarah was proposing. Even the traditionally neutral pledged their empathic networks to the cause. Architect Prime observed this display of unity with apparent fascination. Remarkable, you would unite in opposition to perfection itself. We unite in opposition to slavery disguised as perfection, Sarah corrected. Perfection without choice isn't perfection, it's death. The mechanical being was silent for several seconds, its black eyes apparently processing information from sources beyond the docking bay. The Synthesis Collective will consider your position, Captain, but understand this. We have achieved unity across hundreds of species and thousands of star systems. Your Organic Alliance represents a small fraction of our total resources. Size isn't everything, Architect Prime. Sometimes a small force with the right motivation can accomplish what massive armies cannot. Perhaps, but motivation without coordination is merely chaos. How long do you believe your alliance will last when the true cost of resistance becomes clear? Sarah looked around at the assembled delegates, seeing determination in every alien face and form. I guess we'll find out. But here's what I know about organic life. When our backs are against the wall, when our fundamental existence is threatened, we don't break. We adapt. We evolve. We find ways to survive that machines can't predict because we don't always follow logical patterns. Fascinating, Architect Prime said, and for the first time, its voice carried what might have been genuine interest. You propose to defeat superior technology and resources through the application of organic irrationality. I propose to defeat you through the application of something you can't understand, can't predict, and can't control, the absolutely insane lengths to which free beings will go to stay free. The three synthesis beings stepped backward in perfect synchronization, moving toward their ship. This conversation has been educational, Captain. The collective will reassess our integration timeline in light of your species' responses. But understand that delay is not abandonment of our goals. Understood, Sarah replied. But you should understand something as well, Architect Prime. Humans don't surrender, ever. and now you've given every free species in the galaxy a reason to think like humans. As the synthesis ship sealed its airlock and prepared to depart, Sarah felt the weight of what she had just set in motion. She had essentially declared war on behalf of the entire galaxy against an enemy that them by orders of magnitude. But she had also given them something they'd never had before, a unified purpose and the time to prepare for the fight of their lives. Admiral approached her as the alien vessel departed Harmony Point. "Captain, what have you done?" Sarah watched the synthesis ship disappear into subspace, carrying word of the Organic Alliance back to their collective consciousness. She was ordered to surrender. One hair-tie twist and fear spread. 6 months had transformed the galaxy in ways that no one could have predicted. The Organic Defense Alliance, born from Captain Sarah's desperate gamble at Harmony Point, had grown into the largest cooperative effort in galactic history. From the shipyards of Earth to the crystal foundries of Prime, from the biomechanical workshops of the hives to the energy synthesis plants of the photonic assembly, every member species had contributed their unique capabilities to the war effort. Sarah stood on the bridge of the Meridian, now retrofitted as the command ship for the Alliance's rapid response fleet. Around her, a crew that had grown from 47 researchers to over 300 specialists from a dozen different species worked with the kind of seamless coordination that would have been impossible just months earlier. "Captain," called Lieutenant Torres, still at his communications station despite 3 promotion offers from Fleet Command. "We're receiving the final status reports from the Perseus and Orion sectors. All stellar engineering platforms are online and ready for deployment." Sarah nodded, studying the tactical display that now showed not just star systems, but the vast network of gravitational manipulation devices that Doctor's team had deployed throughout Alliance space. It was the most ambitious engineering project in galactic history, and it had been completed in record time by species that had never worked together before. "Doctor, final systems check on the array." The chief scientist looked up from her expanded workstation, her team now including quantum physicists, crystal resonance specialists, and photonic energy theorists. "All systems nominal, Captain. The stellar engineering network is operating at 97% efficiency. We can trigger controlled stellar events in any Alliance system within 30 seconds of receiving authorization codes." "And the defensive implications?" "Total area denial to any invasion force," Admiral answered from his position at the tactical station. The officer had requested permission to serve aboard the Meridian after his government had formally joined the Alliance. "Any synthesis fleet that attempts to occupy an Alliance system will find themselves dealing with artificially triggered solar flares, gravitational anomalies, and in extreme cases, controlled nova events." Sarah felt a grim satisfaction at the irony. The Synthesis Collective had manipulated them into developing stellar engineering technology, but now that same technology had become the foundation of their defense against synthesis integration. "Captain," came a new harmonic voice from the empathic network. Chancellor's telepathic communication carried undertones of urgency. "Long-range sensors are detecting massive subspace distortions in the outer rim sectors. The synthesis response appears to be beginning." Sarah reached up and touched the elastic band around her wrist, a new habit she had developed during the frantic months of preparation. Her hair was tied back in a military bun now, but the band served as a reminder of the moment when everything had changed. "Put it on the main display." The bridge's viewing screen shifted to show a tactical map of the galaxy's edge, where the first wave of synthesis forces was approaching Alliance space. Sarah felt her breath catch as the scope of the invasion became clear. "How many ships?" she asked quietly. "Initial count indicates over 15,000 vessels," Admiral reported, his neural implants pulsing with data from the fleet's sensor network. "Captain, that's 3 times larger than our most pessimistic projections." "And they're not approaching randomly," Doctor added, her voice tight with concern. "The synthesis forces are moving in perfect coordination across 17 different vectors. They're planning to hit us simultaneously across the entire Alliance perimeter." Sarah studied the display, watching as the synthesis fleet advanced with mechanical precision. Each ship moved in perfect formation with its neighbors, their approach calculated to overwhelm the Alliance's defensive capabilities through sheer mass. But as she watched the enemy advance, Sarah began to smile. "They're making the same mistake they've been making all along," she said quietly. "Captain," Commander asked from his security station. "They're thinking like machines. Perfect coordination, optimal efficiency, calculated responses to predicted resistance." Sarah turned to face her multi-species crew. "They've studied our individual capabilities, our fleet strengths, our defensive installations. They know exactly how to defeat each of our species separately." "But," Tors prompted, "but they don't understand what we've become together. Doctor, initiate Protocol Omega. All stations, prepare for the largest game of cosmic billiards in galactic history." Around the bridge, her crew moved with the fluid efficiency of beings who had learned to think as one while maintaining their individual creativity. It was something the Synthesis Collective, for all their technological superiority, had never been able to achieve. "Protocol Omega initiated," Doctor reported. "All stellar engineering platforms are now linked through the quantum resonance network. We have collective control of gravitational fields throughout Alliance space. Admiral, signal all fleet commanders. Execute pattern Delta 7. This neural implants flashed as he transmitted the complex tactical instructions to hundreds of ships across the Alliance fleet. "All vessels acknowledge, Captain. They're moving into position." On the tactical display, Sarah watched as the Alliance fleet appeared to scatter in panic, individual ships and squadrons breaking formation and fleeing toward the galactic core. To the synthesis forces, it would look like exactly what they expected: organic chaos in the face of superior force. But Sarah knew better. Every ship in that apparent route was moving to precisely calculated positions, part of a plan that no mechanical intelligence could have predicted because it every principle of logical military doctrine. "Captain," came Architect Prime's familiar voice over the communication system, "your fleet appears to be retreating. We are prepared to accept the surrender of Alliance forces and begin integration procedures." Sarah activated the main communication array, broadcasting her response not just to the synthesis fleet, but to every Alliance ship, station, and world within transmission range. "Architect Prime, this is Captain Sarah, commanding the Alliance Defense Forces. I have a message for you and your collective." She reached up and pulled the elastic band from her wrist, holding it for a moment before letting her hair fall free around her shoulders. Across the Alliance fleet, thousands of organic beings recognized the gesture and knew what was coming. "You want to know what organic chaos looks like? You're about to find out. All units execute protocol, make them pay for every light year." What happened next would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for centuries to come. The Alliance fleet's apparent retreat had positioned ships at specific coordinates throughout the spiral arm, each one located at a gravitational nexus point that Doctor's stellar engineering network could influence. As the synthesis forces advanced into what they believed was empty space, the Alliance triggered the most devastating surprise attack in galactic history. Stars that had been stable for millions of years suddenly flared into violent solar storms, sending waves of charged particles across entire systems. Gas giants that had orbited peacefully for eons were nudged from their orbital paths, creating gravitational chaos that disrupted synthesis fleet formations. Binary star systems that had danced in perfect harmony for geological ages were destabilized, triggering energy cascades that turned entire sectors into cosmic storm fronts. And through it all, the Alliance fleet danced between the chaos they had created, using their knowledge of the gravitational disturbances to strike at synthesis forces before disappearing back into the stellar maelstrom. "Damage reports from synthesis forces," Sarah asked as the Meridian rode a gravity wave between two artificially destabilized stars. 37% of their invasion fleet has been destroyed or disabled," Admiral reported with something that might have been awe. "Captain, they're trying to retreat, but the gravitational anomalies are preventing coordinated movement." "Good. Doctor, how long can we maintain this level of stellar manipulation?" "The network was designed for exactly this scenario," the scientist replied. "We can keep the cosmic storm front active for weeks if necessary." Sarah watched as the synthesis forces struggled against the chaotic battlefield the Alliance had created. Ships that relied on perfect coordination found themselves scattered by gravitational tides. Fleets that had moved in mechanical precision were broken apart by solar storms and spatial distortions. "Incoming transmission from Architect Prime," Tors reported. "Put it through." The mechanical being's image appeared on the screen, but for the first time since their initial encounter, it showed signs of distress. Its fiber-optic hair was flashing erratically, and its black eyes seemed to be having difficulty focusing. "Captain, you are destroying entire star systems to prevent our advance. This level of destruction is unprecedented in galactic warfare." Sarah stepped forward, her hair flowing freely around her shoulders. "Architect Prime, you threatened to eliminate the free will of every organic being in the galaxy. Did you expect us to limit our response to conventional tactics? This chaos will consume your own worlds as well as ours." "No, it won't, because unlike your mechanical precision, organic chaos can be controlled by those who understand it. We're not destroying star systems, Architect Prime. We're conducting the largest symphony in galactic history, and every note has been calculated to drive you out of our space." As if to prove her point, the Meridian suddenly accelerated into a gravity slingshot trajectory around a destabilized neutron star, using the very chaos that had disabled dozens of synthesis ships to gain speed and position for another strike. "This is impossible," Architect Prime said, its voice carrying harmonics of confusion. "Organic minds cannot calculate such complex variables." "You're right," Sarah admitted. "Individual. I bought us time, Admiral. Whether we use it wisely or waste it, that's up to all of us now." The galaxy had been warned. The battle for the future of organic consciousness was about to begin. As the unknown ships drew closer to Harmony Point, Sarah prepared to face the greatest challenge of her career, knowing that the fate of not just her crew, but potentially all organic life in the galaxy, might rest on her willingness to never surrender. And the galaxy was beginning to understand what that meant. Sarah closed her eyes and thought of Earth, of the billions of humans who would never know how close they had come to interstellar war, because one research captain had refused to surrender. 5 seconds. She opened her eyes and smiled. "Welcome to the human race, Admiral." The nebula exploded.